I feel very privileged and honored to have to moderate this panel with distinguished panelists, the Honorable Flavien Joubert, Minister of Agriculture, Climate Change and Environment of Seychelles, and Her Excellency Messouda Baham Mohamed Laghdaf, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Mauritania. The session will focus on climate finance and the green economy. Climate finance is a key lever, a key enabler for climate and sustainability transition. Yet, this is one of the key aspects that is not yet fully addressed under the UNFCCC process. We will discuss several topics related to climate finance. First of all, what could be done to enhance the availability of climate finance, and what is it that can be done also within the international finance architecture to make finance in general, climate finance, both from the public and the private sector, accessible to not only developed countries, but also developing countries that are desperately in need of this finance to undertake their climate and sustainability transition. We will also explore to what extent we have experience in the two countries, Seychelles and Mauritania, related to a successful project that have leveraged climate finance for their implementation. So maybe I will start with Seychelles, is Honorable Flavien. So there is a lot of discussion around the availability of climate finance. What is the main actually obstacle for increasing the amount of climate finance that is needed for the developing world to undertake its climate and sustainability transition?
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, everyone who's in the room this afternoon, and also my colleague on my left from Mauritania. The question is about increasing the amount of private finance, climate finance. For us, small island states like Seychelles, we are in a very particular situation. As we develop, because of our population and our size, we rapidly go up the scale in terms of income. And currently, Seychelles is considered as a high-income country, even if we are small, vulnerable in the African region. And it's because of our GDP and our small population that puts us in that bracket. Now, as we continue to interact with partners on the outside, the answer that we get is that your revenue is very high, and therefore you are not eligible. So for us, it's not always a case of more climate finance being made available. It's a situation where we cannot readily access that finance because of the classification that's been put on us in terms of development level. So I guess if we decide to go down in terms of development, we would rapidly be able to access those financial sources. So it has forced us, in a way, to innovate in terms of climate finance and to come up with a mix of measures to address this issue. For example, the country came up with the Blue Bond in 2018 and 2017. Seychelles concluded a debt for nature swap, which was started earlier, I think in 2014. And this gave us some finance, about 21 million plus another $15 million that we could use for action in terms of climate adaptation, in terms of ocean conservation, implementation of marine special plan, and also things that have to do with research and other measures that we need to do to ensure that we continue to exist as a country. It doesn't seem to be a lot, but for a country our size and our population, it has made a big impact. Alongside that, we have had to engage at a deeper level with various institutions and also beef up our capacity to access finance at the local level. And I think that is one of the things that we have to also think about. Climate finance might not be that readily available, but many countries also find it difficult because they lack the capacity to access those ones that are already there and that can be made available. Because sometimes it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of know-how, it takes a mix of skills for countries to be able to really access those sources of finance. And for us, it's been one of those situations where we've had to really enhance our local capacity, using our partners, using opportunities, for example, through UN agencies, for us to be able to access funds like the GCF, GEF, etc. Also, climate finance, we have to remember most of the climate actions that we are talking about, for example, in our NDC, they would be undertaken by the private sector. So one of the issues with climate finance, sorry, I keep saying private finance, one of the issues with climate finance that we see also is that the national debt level and all those different metrics when it comes to classifying a country also influences the manner that private entities can actually access finance to develop their own area and contribute to the national effort on climate. So it is also a question of ensuring that other arm of governance in the country, other arm of the society, which is the private sector, they also are empowered and enabling conditions are put in place for them to be able to access finance. And when you add all of that together, then you can have a package that makes sense for the country, and you can have a certain amount of finance that comes into the country that can help address many of the issues that we have in terms of transition and adaptation. So for us, it's been difficult. We have had to adapt. We have had to change a lot of things in the country. We've had to come up with many new ways of operating and also come up with new schemes, innovative schemes for us to gain access to finance. But overall, I would still agree with you, moderator, that a lot more can be done to make finance available to countries such as ours and countries that are currently developing, to enable them to, as was said this morning, leapfrog this development process and get to the point where they incorporate a lot more of green activities and green initiatives in their economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A lot of important point. It's not just about increasing the amount of climate finance that is available, but it's also about building capacity in the country so that they can access climate finance, and more importantly, it's also about how climate finance is allocated. We need to ensure that where the action will be undertaken at the local level and in the private sector, these key entities can access climate finance. But I would like to follow up with an additional question. What is the role of collaboration to facilitate access to climate finance? First, collaboration across nation, and collaboration within nation between central government and local government, and collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, and philanthropy.
Thank you for this very, very interesting question, Mr. Moderator. In Seychelles, given our size and the manner that every actor in the country is interconnected, collaboration is it works quite well. We have a very vibrant non-governmental sector that works along with us in terms of climate action. And we also have private entities working on climate action in the country with the support of government. So that level of collaboration exists quite a lot. But there is still a lot more that can be done in terms of government getting closer and working better with private actors in, for example, companies, so that we move along at the same speed. We are all making efforts, but we also have to synchronize our efforts to actually get that result at that level that we require for the country to move forward. So for us, one of the things that we've discussed internally is to support the private sector to come up with schemes for the private, by the private, that would enable them to make that great leap forward and really make progress. And that would count, because they are the actors who are running the economy. And if they can transition at a fast pace, that would have a huge impact on the country, instead of many of those companies currently relying on a philosophy of just regulatory compliance. So whenever government comes up with new rules, they just have to abide to it. Rules in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of water conservation, in terms of resource use, they just have to abide to it. We don't want that. What we need is for private actors to actually leap forward on their own and create ambition amongst themselves and encourage each other, and also do their own verification and accounting for their actions at the private sector level. In terms of cooperation between nations, Seychelles, as we all know, we enjoy very good relations with most entities out there. We have very few enemies, by the way. We don't have. We are very friendly with many countries, and through that we're able to leverage those relationships to get access to some resources that helps us along. And we also value a lot of the regional cooperations that we see with many organizations. The Global Alliance on Green Economy, we are hoping, could be also one of those entities where we leverage that interconnection between countries and bring about changes and improvements in terms of capacity and also access to resource. So for us, we have done quite well working with our partners in the region. We have worked with banks, we have worked with regional organizations, we have worked with different networks. We have been supported in various ways. And for us as a country, we don't have a lot to give back because we don't have that much in terms of financial resource. But one of the things that we give to our partners whenever they decide to work with us is the assurance that every cent that you put into Seychelles would lead to definite action on the ground. You will get results if you invest in a country like ours, because we have stable governance, we have very good control systems, we have very good records with many of the entities out there on how we have utilized funds in the past. And we would like to continue to give that assurance to our partners when they come forward and assist us. It's the least we can do, to give our partners the assurance that we can do well and we can deliver, even if we get small amounts of support every here and there. So for us, we will continue to build those relationships, and it would help us to create the results for us, but also add to the global results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to turn to Her Excellency, Messouda Baham Mohamed Laghdaf. We know that one of the main approach to ensure success in implementation of climate action is to have it mainstream in national politics. And,
Désolé de vous couper. Il faut me poser la question en français puisque je n'ai pas la traduction.
Ok, on sait que l'une des conditions de succès pour la mise en œuvre d'actions climatiques est de les avoir intégrées aux politiques nationales ainsi qu'aux stratégies de développement national. En Mauritanie, est-ce que vous avez des exemples d'actions climat réussies parce qu'ils ont été intégrés et mainstream dans des politiques nationales, dans des stratégies nationales de développement?
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Donc, pour ce qui est... Merci de m'avoir donné l'opportunité de faire une présentation de mon pays auparavant pour pouvoir répondre à votre question. Donc, la Mauritanie est un pays d'Afrique. C'est un pays désertique et donc parmi les 10 pays les plus vulnérables face au changement climatique. Cette vulnérabilité est due à trois paramètres. Le premier, c'est que la Mauritanie est un pays côtier, donc sur une côte de plus de 700 km linéaires, et avec le rehaussement du niveau de mer, donc on considère que notre pays est très vulnérable face à ce fléau. Aussi, c'est un pays désertique. Pour la plupart, 90% du territoire, plus de 90% du territoire mauritanien est un territoire désertique. Et c'est un pays pauvre, donc il ne dispose pas de moyens financiers pour faire face au changement climatique. C'est pourquoi les changements climatiques sont bien intégrés et ont une part importante dans la politique nationale de la Mauritanie. Donc, plusieurs projets, je vais en donner quelques exemples, sont financés par la finance climatique. J'en cite quelques-uns et je vais les classer par les projets d'adaptation et les projets d'atténuation. Pour ce qui est des projets d'atténuation, la Mauritanie œuvre pour le maximum de séquestration du CO2. Et dans ce cadre, nous tendons vers une réduction de l'utilisation des énergies fossiles. Et on se donne un objectif de 60% de mix énergétique à l'horizon 2030. Nous sommes déjà à un mix énergétique de 30% pour le moment. La Mauritanie fait un large programme d'intégration d'énergie solaire pour l'électrification de la ville de Nouakchott, la capitale, mais aussi dans les villes à l'intérieur du pays. Donc, on tend à insérer ou à intégrer le maximum d'énergie photovoltaïque, mais aussi d'énergie éolienne. On vient aussi d'adopter notre loi, la loi sur la production et l'utilisation de l'hydrogène vert. Donc, en matière d'atténuation, la Mauritanie, on peut considérer qu'elle est parmi les rares pays qui ont atteint un taux de 30% de mix énergétique dans la sous-région. Pour ce qui est des politiques d'adaptation, nous avons des projets, je parlerai plutôt de projets d'envergure, de projets régionaux. Et là, vous savez que la Mauritanie est membre du grand projet de la Muraille verte, qui regroupe plus de 11 pays du continent. Ce pays tend vers la séquestration du carbone, la décarbonisation, et dans ce cadre, il y a une forestation ou la plantation d'arbres tout au long du chemin de la Grande Muraille Verte. Et il y a aussi un programme de résilience auprès des populations. Donc il y a des activités génératrices de revenus, il y a un renforcement des capacités au niveau de la zone bénéficiaire de ce grand projet qui est le projet de la Grande Muraille Verte. Il y a aussi un grand projet qui est le projet d'adaptation au niveau de la côte de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, qui est connu sous le nom de WACA, qui est financé par la Banque mondiale. Et c'est un projet aussi qui vise à la protection des ressources naturelles au niveau du littoral. Et en même temps, il y a un système aussi de résilience et de renforcement des capacités pour les populations riveraines du littoral. Il y a d'autres projets aussi importants qui sont en matière d'urbanisation ou de bâtiments plutôt. Nous utilisons des matériaux respectueux de l'environnement, comme l'argile, qui est mélangée avec des produits végétaux, et pour éviter au maximum l'utilisation du béton armé, qui est un grand producteur de CO2. Il y a aussi d'autres programmes d'utilisation de produits naturels, un mélange de tifa, qui est une plante, vous la connaissez très bien, qui est une plante très envahissante, un mélange de tifa, d'argile et de comment on l'appelle, les trucs de riz, c'est ça, on les utilise pour les bâtiments, on les utilise pour la construction des écoles et pour la construction des centres de santé. Donc là, ce sont de grands projets qui ont donné de très bons résultats en matière de protection de l'environnement de façon générale et de faire face aussi au changement climatique. Merci.
Merci pour ces exemples. Je pense que c'est très intéressant d'avoir ces exemples venant de pays en développement qui, avec des ressources limitées, essaient de mettre en œuvre des actions climat qui sont pour la plupart basées sur des innovations qui sont transformatives, comme par exemple l'utilisation de matériaux alternatifs qui a un impact extrêmement élevé en matière d'atténuation des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Donc, les pays en développement ont la volonté de mettre en place des actions climat, aussi bien en atténuation qu'en adaptation, mais nous devons reconnaître que ça a un coût. Et la plupart du temps, les moyens ne suivent pas. Ils sont prêts à intégrer dans les politiques nationaux des actions climat, mais encore faudrait-il qu'ils aient les moyens de mise en œuvre en termes de finances, en termes de technologie, en termes de développement des capacités. Alors, ma deuxième question, c'est qu'est-ce que l'on pourrait faire sur le plan de la coopération internationale en matière d'action climat pour aider davantage les pays en développement à mettre en œuvre leurs actions climat pour atteindre les objectifs du CDN et du PAN.
Merci. Donc, pour ce qui est de comment aider les pays en voie de développement pour pouvoir exécuter à bien ou exécuter à terme leur programme inscrit dans leur CDN, c'est-à-dire leur contribution déterminée nationale, il y a lieu de dire que nous, en tant que pays africains, nous participons au changement climatique ou au gaz à effet de serre à hauteur de 30%, pour ne pas dire moins. Donc, on subit plutôt les problèmes de changement climatique. Et dans ce cadre, on a toujours parlé du principe de pollueur-payeur. Donc, l'idée que nous, en tant que pays subissant les changements climatiques, on doit être dédommagés dans ce sens. Et dans ce cadre, nous œuvrons tous à avoir le maximum de financement auprès des fonds destinés dans ce sens. Donc, ces financements doivent commencer au tout début, c'est-à-dire dans l'élaboration de la CDN elle-même. Et parce qu'en général, les pays en voie de développement ne disposent pas de ressources humaines, ne disposent pas de compétences aptes à élaborer des plans d'action dignes de ce nom qui peuvent faire face à ces changements climatiques. Donc, il y a déjà plusieurs fonds qui agissent dans ce sens, notamment le Fonds de changement climatique. Nous avons le FEM. Nous avons aussi au niveau de Bonn le NDC Partnership qui agit aussi dans ce sens. Et dans ce cadre, je m'en vais demander aux pays hôtes, c'est-à-dire les Émirats arabes unis, de voir dans quelles possibilités il peut y avoir une mobilisation de fonds, particulièrement pour le Moyen-Orient et pour l'Afrique du Nord. L'idée de création d'un fonds dans ce sens peut être d'une très grande utilité pour les pays de l'Afrique du Nord, et particulièrement pour mon pays, qui est un pays ne disposant pas de moyens pour faire face aux problèmes de changement climatique. Donc la coopération est la seule possibilité pour le financement de ces programmes face au changement climatique au niveau des pays en voie de développement. Donc, je lance un appel pour une meilleure coopération, pour une synergie des efforts de la part des pays en Afrique, particulièrement en Afrique du Nord, pour la mobilisation de maximum de fonds pour faire face à ce fléau combien important.
So collaboration, radical collaboration between the North and the South, but also South-South collaboration is needed to address the challenge of climate and sustainability. We have been talking about climate finance and how to make it accessible to the developing world since several years. I'm wondering to what extent we should not also start putting effort in designing new innovative financial instruments that maybe will help remove the barrier of access to climate finance. What is your view on that, Honorable Flavien? Do you think that we need, and there is possibility, to come up with innovative financial instruments?
Thank you. Yes, I think this is not just a call from me, it's from various leaders of small island developing states, from developing countries, from countries that need to access those sources of finance. The call is for the systems themselves to be reviewed and for the method of accessing those funds to be refreshed so that countries can actually get to that resource as quickly as possible and implement measures to cause a change, a definite change on the ground, and contribute towards the global efforts in containing that rise in temperature so that we don't overshoot the 1.5 degree centigrade threshold. The thing that we must all understand is that the more we delay, the more the impacts will become more accentuated, the more the world would suffer. And most of the suffering, as we know, it often goes to people in the developing world and some of the poorest of this world. So it is, in a way, an indirect, shall I say, punishment for those who are poorer, those who are already lost their opportunity in terms of development, those who have already not been able to gain access to the riches of this world, who are then suffering the impacts of climate change because of the framework, the way it is set up currently. So it is important that the system is reviewed, and it is important that we see the linkages between those measures that we have right now that govern access to finance and the suffering that people endure in the developing world and in the poorest parts of this world. So for me, I would just carry forward the call from our leaders and from my leader, His Excellency the President of Seychelles, Mr. Rankalawan, that we must do it, and we must do it now, and we cannot delay and pretend that this issue will go away, because it is evident from the experience of all countries who have tried to access the resources that it is very difficult, it is very resource intensive for you to gain access to those financial resources. It's almost like mining for Bitcoin. You have to spend more energy to access the resource itself. So we should do it, and we should be aware that the more we delay in doing it, the greater the impact would be on the entire world.
Thank you so much. Maybe a follow-up question. Do you think that a more formal approach, recognizing the enabling role of financial, could be helpful? So for example, we know that currently countries focus very much on reducing their own emission. If there was a more formal approach to recognize the contribution of an enabling country that would provide financial resources to developing countries and consider this as an important contribution to climate action, do you think that it could incentivize developed countries to maybe contribute more in financing?
Well, the world is at such a stage that all measures should be on the table. All forms of incentives, all means of addressing the situation should be put on the table. And as countries, individual countries, and as groups of countries or regions, we should be exploring all the various options and finding ways to accelerate access to resource, and in turn accelerate action on adaptation and especially mitigation, because it's mitigation that will help us cut back on the continued degradation in the state of the atmosphere. So we have to consider all forms of encouragement. Some might be seen as unfair. We have to go through the process of analyzing them and thinking through, and ensuring that it's not a cop-out for some countries, ensuring that it doesn't lead to more inequality amongst countries, and ensuring that there is a fair distribution of burden amongst the different countries. So those who have benefited from industrialization have to bear in a greater proportion the burden of supporting action on climate. This has to remain as the cornerstone of the action on climate. So we have to make sure that the proposals themselves, they are fair, they are equitable, but once they have passed those tests, once we've all accepted that they are systems that can be encouraged among countries or amongst groups of countries, then they should be on the table, because we are at a very late stage and we have to be ready to accept all the various forms of action that would lead to a positive impact on our climate. But of course, we all subscribe to the idea of fairness, equity, justice. So there has to be all those things in there for us to accept those measures. Thank you.
So fairness, equity, justice, ensuring that the principle of common but differentiated responsibility and capability is applied when it comes to climate collaboration. No, thank you so much. Now I would like to turn to Her Excellencies. Comment les initiatives qui sont menées dans le cadre et en dehors de l'accord de Paris, tels que les dialogues annuels, pourraient-elles aider la mise en œuvre des résultats du bilan mondial et du programme de mise en œuvre de la technologie, des résultats tardifs des gaz à effet de serre, en une action climatique ambitieuse et concrète sur le terrain?
Donc, je vous remercie. Donc, pour ce qui est de la mobilisation ou de l'exécution de programmes de programmes inscrits dans le cadre des accords de Paris et dans la Convention cadre des Nations Unies pour la protection, pour les changements climatiques. Il y a eu un certain nombre d'engagements de la part des pays de l'Occident de façon générale. Malheureusement, ces engagements n'ont pas accompagné afin d'aboutir à des résultats probants. C'est pourquoi les pays en voie de développement tendent vers des objectifs quantifiables pour la prochaine COP de 2029 afin d'aboutir à des résultats qui peuvent être un peu plus contraignants par rapport aux accords auparavant. Je sais que les accords de Paris sont un peu plus contraignants que les autres accords. Toutefois, les déclarations ou les objectifs fixés pendant les accords de Paris n'ont malheureusement pas pu aboutir à cause de manque de financement. Donc, les annonces faites lors de la COP 27 et de la COP 28 n'ont malheureusement pas accompagné comme il faut. C'est pourquoi il est temps de faire un plaidoyer conséquent pour la mobilisation de fonds et pour se fixer des objectifs bien spécifiques, des objectifs quantifiables pour lesquels on peut aboutir dans les prochaines années à venir. Et donc, pour ce qui est de la Mauritanie particulièrement, je sais qu'elle est en bonne posture pour ce qui est de la mobilisation des financements changement climatique, parce qu'elle dispose déjà d'une CDN préétablie et déjà validée dans tous les secteurs. Et elle vient de lancer ce qu'on appelle la BTR, c'est-à-dire le rapport biennal de transparence sur les changements climatiques, et elle a des programmes ambitieux et je dirais qu'elle est très agressive face aux financiers du climat, et je crois que dans les prochains jours à venir, on pourra faire des programmes beaucoup plus réalistes et beaucoup plus d'avoir des objectifs qu'on peut atteindre facilement avec la mobilisation des fonds au sein des financiers du climat.
My last question to both of you. We know that at the next COP, the new collective quantified goal on climate finance will be at the center of the discussion. But we also know that public finance are scarce, and unless we are able to leverage private finance, we will not be able to address climate and sustainability, because we are talking about trillions, whereas the public finance is about billions. Do you think that a global guarantee fund could be the way forward to provide more access to low-cost finance from the capital market to developing countries?
Thank you, moderator. Well, my interaction with the private sector and private partners is that there is money out there. There is finance out there that can help. It will not solve the whole climate problem, but there is enough finance out there to help kickstart a lot of new initiatives and help support a lot of measures that countries and companies and other players want to put in place. And we have to just find the right mechanism to access that finance. We have to understand that finance, private finance, when they come to the table, they don't want to lose the finance. They want to actually maintain, retain, or even grow what they have. So we have to understand it from their perspective. But there is a need for mechanisms to be put in place to pull more of that finance from where they are and make them available to players that might use it, for example, for climate action at state level. So the financial experts would come up with the means of implementation. They would come up with the different mechanisms, how this can be done. But there is a sense that we can plug some of that financial hole by bringing on board new finance from the private and by creating the right environment for that finance to come on board and be used. So I would agree with this approach where new mechanisms are presented and where new players are attracted to put their money into climate action. But also it's important that we, all of us and the whole world, we point out to private financiers that, look, keeping your money on the side and not using it for climate action means also eventually losing your money and our money at the same time. So we all have to chip in and we all have to be ready and willing to take a risk on climate action, because eventually it will prevent us from losing what we have, losing assets as a country, losing the livelihoods of populations, losing the quality of life of various countries, and also losing capital for those private actors, because their capital would also erode over time with the impacts of climate. Because their capital, where is it? It's in real estate, it's in industries, it's in various ventures out there that also are subject to the impact of climate. So they have to also be willing, or they have to be invited to consider climate action with or without such mechanisms. But if such mechanisms can be put in place, I think it would create a significant improvement in the level of available capital for countries, state actors, or even private actors to utilize. Thank you.
Rapidement, en une minute, quel pourrait être le rôle d'un fonds de garantie pour attirer les investissements privés? Quel pourrait être le rôle d'un fonds de garantie? Parce que nous savons que les finances publiques ne seront pas suffisantes. On a besoin des financements privés. Quel pourrait être le rôle d'un fonds de garantie pour faciliter l'accès au financement privé?
Merci. L'idée de création de taxes ou de royalties afin de financer les problèmes de changement climatique est une excellente idée, et c'est une piste, je crois, à explorer dans tous les États, car elle crée un peu une certaine autonomie des États par rapport aux financiers de l'Occident. Et c'est une excellente idée, une idée à encourager. Donc avant de terminer, je ne saurais terminer sans remercier et exprimer toute ma gratitude pour le gouvernement des Émirats arabes unis pour leur engagement à la disponibilité de 15 000 gigawatts au profit des pays africains d'ici 2030. Qu'ils trouvent ici nos remerciements et notre gratitude. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le modérateur.
Merci bien. A very important point for conclusion, and maybe it should serve as example for other countries to also contribute, because addressing climate change is all about sharing. So it means that we need to be able to give generously, we need to be able to receive graciously, and we need to be able to collaborate genuinely. Thank you for that conclusion, and I would like to invite you to provide a round of applause to my panelists. Thank you so much.